to another episode of the Riri Show. I feel incredibly grateful today to be joined by the absolutely talented, hardworking Derek Yoo, CEO of PureStake, working on Moonbeam, Moonriver. Welcome to the show, Derek. It's been a long time coming.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just been a pleasure. It's actually a pleasure to sit down with you today because you and your team have really, built a serious standard here when we talk about, layer ones. And Moonbeam and Moonriver is huge and very well known now. Like you've really just absolutely skyrocketed in the community. And I know you have answered this like many times before. You're probably a little tired of it, but before we tap into anything, if you can just give the viewers a very brief overview of what Moonbeam and Moonriver are.
Yeah, of course. So the concept or the idea behind both Moonriver and Moonbeam is to create a developer platform that's designed specifically for cross-chain use cases. And so I think that's something that like Polkadot itself is really good at. So that's why we even like went down the path of building on Polkadot. That's why we made decisions like doing this Ethereum compatibility thing, because that would give us access to all these like developer tools. But really, that's the guiding vision, is that we think there's going to be lots of different blockchains out there. There already are, but there's going to be even more over time. And so then you really need as a developer a way to get access to and work with all these different blockchains. So that's really what Moonbeam and Moonriver are about.
100% too. And I think, with developers that are, have familiarity with Ethereum, it's that, that comfortability to be able to come over and be part of Moonriver and Moonbeam. So that's big. We often talk about really multi-chain and cross-chain. It's a very common phrase kind of right now. We're really seeing a push here, but just to intro us off before we get into this, can you tell the viewers a little bit of the difference between multi-chain and cross-chain?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, this is an exercise we're going through now, because I would say that those terms are not necessarily like precisely defined or used like, in the same way by different people. And so I think what we found actually is that we may need to create some new terminology here to make it clearer, like when we're talking about different things. But I'll explain at least some of the key ideas and distinctions that I think are quite important to keep in mind. So one is that when I use the terms, when we're talking about multi-chain, I think that's really referring to this idea that, it used to be back in the day, you would just pick one chain, right? So you pick one chain, you deploy to one chain, that's it. And I think then the idea was, okay, well, now that there's more chains than just Ethereum mainnet, like what do we do? And I'll give the example that Sushi, like a longtime collaborator of ours, was a great pioneer in this area, where they said, look, yes, we started off on Ethereum, but now there's different chains out there. There's Avalanche, there's Moonbeam, there's different chains. So how do we get to the users and assets that are on those chains? Because that's like untapped market, right? If we're just on Ethereum, then there's like all this stuff happening elsewhere, all this growth, and we need to be part of that. And this is where when I start using the term multi-chain, I think this is kind of the idea. Is they said, let's just take the thing we made it on Ethereum, and we're going to make copies of it. We're just going to deploy that thing onto Avalanche, onto Polygon, like onto BSC. Just deploy it to like all these different chains. And so then you have this situation where you have Sushi, like the protocol, the automated market making DEX, but it's deployed in like all these places. I think they have actually 16 deployments now. They might have more. Wow. Yes, last I looked, it was 16 like deployments on different chains. And so it's kind of good in a way. So then like, instead of just being on Ethereum, then you're on like all these other places, and you can, some users are local there, some assets are local there. So then you kind of have this way to address all these different like markets if you're Sushi. Now, I think the problem though is that like when you take this approach, you kind of have like, it's like 16 different installations, right? So there's 16 different Sushis you can go to. And even when you go to the front end, right, like you pick like in a drop down, you're like, okay, I want to connect to this one. And then you like zoom over to that one. But like the instance on Polygon or the instance on Moonbeam doesn't have any awareness or connection to any of the other ones, right? So there's like these 16 different islands. And so this is where, I think that the place where we are right now is people are starting to like attack this problem. And this is a problem that I see Moonbeam as being specifically designed to address, is how do we let a developer create something that's going to be on all these chains, but it's going to look and feel and behave like one system instead of 16 different systems. In the case of a DeFi protocol, you can have a scenario where you might do something on one chain, but that allows you to do something else on another chain. that's the thing that's about to happen, because we see development teams that are pursuing this idea like right now, but they're like not quite like deployed. So yeah, I guess multi-chain, I see this more as this like, you know, multiple independent instances. Cross-chain, you know, currently is mostly about bridges and moving assets back and forth, but this is where there's like a big innovations happening, like in cross-chain technology. And that's the thing that we're attaching to. We want Moonbeam to be this place that has this built-in cross-chain functionality. And by the way, Polkadot is like leading this like area too, right? With their XCM technology. This is like, you know, this is kind of like better than has ever existed before, cross-chain technology. And I think it's going to be a big unlock for, you know, a lot of reasons.
Yeah, totally. And that's where we use terms too, like united and integration, right? Like it's all about being able to, you know, to integrate and unite the different parachains, make things easy. And with XCM too, you guys are doing a lot there actually. And we're going to get into like all of your token stuff because there's a lot going on for you guys and a lot of new assets, et cetera. So we'll get into that and how that kind of comes to play with the whole cross-chain thing. But how do you see blockchain then maybe changing in the future as this grows or becomes more apparent, or as we see, you know, the advancement of cross-chain in the distant future? Like, what do you see here? What's your envisionment?
Yeah, well, as I said, I think that if you just accept the idea that there's going to be a lot of blockchains, then the need for those chains to interoperate is kind of almost self-evident, right? Because a blockchain on its own, that's an island, is only so useful. Like, and by the way, to date, almost all blockchains are still those islands, right? And you do have these like bridges, but in general, they are still pretty insular things where most everything is just happening on, you know, just like within the you know, the chain. I mean, I guess I would say this, that like my vision is that there already are a lot of blockchains, but there's like many different kinds, right? And I do think that this is going to standardize over time, that there will be, you know, even there'll be more blockchains, but they'll consolidate around like a few different like operating systems, if you want to call it that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Just like computers, like, you know, there's many computers, but there's really, you know, you got Apple phones, you got Android, you got like Windows, you got Mac. There's just a consolidation around the tech that runs them, even though there's many of them. So that's my vision, is I think that that's going to happen, you know, with blockchains, that there's going to be many of them. Developers will be able to create their own, but there'll be these kind of standardized operating systems. And so one of those operating systems is Substrate. So that's the technology that the team at Parity behind Polkadot has worked on. You know, super impressive technology. We used it ourselves to implement Moonbeam. Those are the tools that we used. It basically is this framework for building like your own blockchain. So that's going to be one, because it's, you know, these things are like take massive amounts of effort. It's like an engineering marvel like that they've come up with to create this like framework to build blockchains. But the EVM, you know, this Ethereum style approach is another one. So, you know, and you can already see that a lot of the chains that have traction have taken this like, you know, Ethereum compatibility approach. A third one, which, you know, we work less with, but, you know, we do actually have some integrations with, is the Cosmos like ecosystem. So this Cosmos SDK, which is kind of a competitor in a way to, or an alternate approach to what Substrate does. So in any case, there's like these few different operating systems. And so, you know, we've tried to position ourselves strategically to say, like, you know, we're going to be at the intersection of two of them. So we're at the intersection of Substrate and this like Ethereum EVM. And actually, we're doing work these days like to do integrations to Cosmos chains too. I think that this is going to be the center of, or these operating systems are going to be driving a lot of the new chains that get produced.
100%. And I think too, like, I mean, a big attraction to the Polkadot ecosystem, as you said, is Substrate. You know, like at the base and the framework is already there. So I think that definitely plays a big role into the attraction of why you would want to build in the Polkadot ecosystem. And then Ethereum by itself is already so well known. So, but what in your mind makes then a successful EVM dapp on top of that? Even maybe, you know, what makes a successful layer one? Because there are other layer ones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll start with the second part first, of what makes a successful layer one. So I do think that, you as with any product, or any tech product or any product, you need differentiation, right? You need something that's going to be unique and special and stay in people's minds. And I think that, you know, we're at a moment now where it's getting increasingly easy to create these like layer one blockchains, given these frameworks like Substrate and Cosmos SDK, as we were talking about. So this differentiation becomes very important. You know, just having like an EVM chain like that, I think is going to be increasingly hard to do, right? So there's like a lot of people that have taken this thing Geth, which is the thing that runs Ethereum, and made a copy of it, right? So that's, you know, BSC is one example of that. Even like Avalanche and their C chain, like, is ultimately is running a copy of this this geth. I think while that's good in a way that it's the standard thing that developers can use, you do need this like ability to differentiate. And so for us, that's this optimizing for these cross-chain use cases. And we can go into those. Actually, that's a little bit of the answer to the first question, which is what makes a successful dapp. I mean, for us, there's a lot of dapps that, of course, just use this EVM environment that we've had a lot of deployments of things that exist on other chains, like Ethereum, that then come to Moonbeam, which is great. Like, you need almost that to build this like base layer of capabilities. But the teams that I'm most excited about right now are the teams that are leaning into these cross-chain messages and are creating what we're calling connected like contracts, right? So they're basically taking smart contracts on Moonbeam and connecting them to other blockchains or other smart contracts on other chains. And that's like a new approach. That's some of these messaging features just shipped. So this is like brand new stuff that developers have access to for the first time. And I believe it's going to change, a lot of things. So those are the ones I'm most interested in. I would say that it's still quite early though. So they're like under development now. Some of the first teams we're working with, these use cases are going to ship in the second half of the year. But there's a number of really great teams that are pursuing, that are using these cross-chain technologies that are on Moonbeam to create these new kinds of dapps.
100%. So you did mention change here, and I know I'm really picking your brain about all this stuff. But in terms of change, so then what do you see for maybe like the difference in maybe current trends or where we see dapps going now and how these dapps will then change over time? I know you just kind of briefly mentioned that. Are you able to elaborate a bit there?
Yeah, so let me use a specific example to illustrate like the change and what the point is. So let's take, we have a lot of DeFi like apps on or dapps on Moonbeam. So like I would say that so if people are familiar with let's say like a Compound, right? So Compound is a lending and borrowing protocol that exists on Ethereum. And so the way it works is that as a user you can deposit in like assets of one kind, and then that gives you credit then to be able to withdraw like another kind of asset like from the protocol. And so right now, like when you have a protocol like that, like going back to this multi-chain kind of idea, one approach is to say, let's take that lending and borrowing protocol and let's deploy it to like all the chains we're interested in. So we're going to deploy it to Ethereum, Moonbeam, Avalanche, BSC, and so on. And so if you think about what happens then is that every deployment like of that protocol is its own island in a way. So if I go to BSC, I can like go and deposit like assets in there. That gives me the right to withdraw assets from like that like instance. But if I go to Moonbeam, it doesn't know anything about what's happening on BSC. So we're working with a team right now called Prime, and so their idea is let's like make a kind of a version of this that has like connected like smart contracts. And so the way it works is this, that they have basically in their system like the center of the brain is going to be on Moonbeam. So there's kind of this like main like brain there. And then they have like where these remote satellite installations like on a bunch of the other chains, like Avalanche, Ethereum mainnet, and so on. And then the idea is if you go and do a deposit on Avalanche, instead of staying local, it sends like a message back to the Moonbeam brain and it says like, hey, this user made a deposit. And then basically then if they go to like Ethereum, they can say, I want to withdraw. It'll consult back to the brain and say, oh, look, this user made a deposit on Avalanche. So let me like let this person like withdraw something on Ethereum. And so you see that like it's a subtle difference, but like what you have now is you have like a global view over like all of the chains basically, right? And so anything that's happening on any chain is visible or can be used like on any other chain. And so that's like a big unlock, right? So like it's a big unlock in the sense that in this use case, it's like the TVL or the deposits on any chain that kind of sums together. You can use the system like a whole, and it's almost like it's like a regular, the way a regular bank works, right? You might have like the master branch, then you have like your local branch, like in your town or whatever, but they're all kind of connected together. So that's the idea that this team is pursuing, and I think that it illustrates the power of this like ability to use messages to connect things like across chains. Then you have basically the benefits of being everywhere. So you can, the local branch can still service the users there, like and service the people who need like local services, but you kind of like can leverage that like anywhere else, basically, right? You're part of like the same system. So this is like my belief is that almost every like protocol out there is going to have to rethink like what it means to like use an approach like this and to live on like multiple chains at once. And we're at the very, very beginning of this like shift in thinking. And my belief is I think even some of the winners from like this early stage of thinking about things only in a single chain context, if they can't adapt, they may like lose out to other people that are good at this, using this like new approach, like this connected contracts approach.
That's a really good point. And I think you made a couple really good points, but I think one of them that really resonated is the fact that subtle changes don't mean that they don't have a large effect, first of all, right? And I think absolutely as adaptation is so important in this space. And I think, as technology moves forward, and you can even compare it to something super, layman, like, learning to use a smartphone instead of a flip phone, right? Like if you don't adapt to change, you get left behind in this environment. So I think absolutely it really is about adapting. And I mean, in terms of adapting, you guys have done a lot of that over the past year. You just hit your 1-year milestone officially since Moonriver deployed its first parachain on Kusama. That's huge. Like that's a whole year of major things happening. So Moonriver alone has had quite the journey. I don't know if you can touch on some of the challenges or milestones your team has really experienced along the way. It's had a journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's been quite a journey, as you say. I mean, you say it's been a year. It feels like it's been longer than that, but it's been a lot that's happened in that year. I mean, Moonriver has just been essential. This is like where we first cut our teeth. It was the first chain we launched. It was the first, it's the first in everything basically, right? Because everything happens there first. So it's always going to be quite special, like to me and the team. But what would I say? I would say that we, as a team, we just like, I value like consistent like execution a lot, right? So it's like, I think you see some folks that like, will kind of do this like massive sprint and then like, kind of they get a bunch done, but then there's like a big lull. It's like, I value, I think in this space, you need to be consistent, right? And that takes like discipline and takes like, every morning kind of getting up and, so you need this discipline to be able to ship things like, on this like regular basis. And by the way, like Substrate is like really great for this. This is like one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize and don't talk about a lot is that Substrate is designed so that you can update like the blockchain software itself, very quickly, very easily, like without like these like forks or other problems that a lot of other chains have. And we've been using those features a lot. We've had a lot of like updates. So I probably can't like quote exactly how many, but at least we're on like a monthly shipping cadence right now where we have like updates shipping every month. And when I tell that to some people, they're like, shipping every month. Like this is like not normal for blockchains, right? For a blockchain project, sometimes you might only ship 2-3 times a year, right? That might be more normal. But I mean, for me, this ability to constantly be like updating and reacting to the market and adding features like based on feedback, that's like a big competitive advantage. So that's like, a big part of, I think, how our project has been successful is this kind of consistency. And then like this, every month there's like a new update, like we're responding to things, we're adapting, we're addressing like issues, and you just have to like maintain that. Like you just have to keep doing that, right? You can't get tired. So I think that's, there's no like big secret. I think that's just kind of how we've been able to make a lot of progress. It's just doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Hard work. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? And I would even, like, I know you were saying shipping monthly, but I would even challenge that because it something I pay attention to. And I think that a lot of the community does is actually Hallister does weekly recaps of Moonriver. And every week I've been reading them a lot and for a long time now. And every week I am always just absolutely shocked at the information that's come out about a week at Moonbeam Moonriver. Like it's incredible the amount that comes out of.
He does a great job. Like I read those myself. So sometimes I learn things in there. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that happened. Because it's a permissionless platform, right? So sometimes things are happening and I don't even know, right? Because we're not talking to all the teams that are doing deployments. Yeah, when I talk about shipping, that's like the core code itself. But of course, like deployments onto the chain, there's like a lot of that activity happening. Like a lot.
Totally. Well, yeah. I mean, I think you guys hit actually from what I was reading, you guys are the most active parachain. I'm pretty sure that still stands.
I wouldn't be surprised. There is this pretty cool site that this third party made called Downtown Moonbeam, and that has like a pretty curated like list of like all the projects. And there's over 200 basically projects in the ecosystem now, so it's quite a bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely quite a bit for sure. So, and you guys have recently settled into your new slot as well. So how's that been?
It was uneventful. So it's the kind of upgrade you like. It's like, I think there was some nerves, it's like, well, we've tried it in our test net, some other things, but you go to, one goes to hit the button and, I mean, we did in the early days of Moonriver, we actually had a stall, like, so it was short lived, but I think this is part of the learnings, on Moonriver was that, if you don't, things can go wrong if you're not extremely careful, basically. So with these things, but yeah, that renewal, that went fine. The Moonbeam Foundation did like self-fund that slot. I had some questions about that because I think some people were like, oh, is there going to be another crowd loan? And the first crowd loan was so great, and we obviously the Moonriver crowd loan was a great catalyst for the building of the community, like around actually both projects, I think, right? Because Moonriver, but then even I've seen project teams on Moonbeam being like, oh, we want the Moonriver community, so then they're like, targeting kind of or airdropping or doing things to like the Moonriver crowd loaners as like the kind of the most fervent base that they want to like engage. But I think that the one point I would make here is that I've had to dispel a bit of a myth sometimes where people will tell me like, oh, Moonriver, Moonbeam, like, you had these crowd loans, they were so like, expensive, like there was like so much like, DOT or KSM that needed to be raised, so I have this impression that Kusama or Polkadot's like too expensive to build on. Like I want to, I don't have the money as a developer, I want to go somewhere else. And so I want to just take the opportunity to dispel that myth because yeah, of course, we were I think the second parachain that went live in both cases, and there was there was a lot of interest in like our crowd loan and other things, but at this point, the cost for a development team to get one of these parachain slots is like much less, right? So even market conditions notwithstanding, just there's more of them, more supply now. And so I always think I'm encouraging builders to say like, the substrate's very powerful. If you want to build something, it is like actually competitively priced to like other other options to go for a parachain. And yeah, so we kind of jumped on that same opportunity to say, hey, like we can, the Moonbeam Foundation can self-fund this, and that's an easy way for us to just continue operation of Moonriver.
For sure. I thought it was exciting. I mean, I feel like a lot of jaws dropped behind the screens when we all found that out. And I mean, we were just excited that you guys were back with settling into another parachain slot altogether. So, and I've been a community member of Moonriver and Moonbeam for a while as well. So very, very exciting. And what has gained really major traction, and I mean, for a good reason, is your work on XC tokens. So I do want to get into that a little bit. And to start this conversation, can you just touch on the relationship between ERC20 tokens and XC tokens? Because there is, as it sits, ERC20 tokens aren't able to travel, for maybe lack of a better word, to the rest of the parachains, right? So there is a problem that is solved here.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the general idea in everything we do is we're looking to do things, on Kusama and Polkadot, but do them in a way where they're accessible to the EVM that we have and all of these Ethereum development tools. And so one of the things that we realized right away when we were looking at this was saying, hey, all of the different teams building in Polkadot have their own, at least one, their own native token, and possibly others, for example, like AUSD, and there's other interesting tokens that teams are creating. But the challenge is that those are all substrate native tokens, right? So these are tokens that kind of live at the base chain layer itself when you're building using substrate. And so they're not by default accessible inside of the EVM. So for developers that are building on Moonbeam. So we knew kind of from the start that we wanted to solve this problem. And so the first feature that we've shipped around XCM, which is the Polkadot messaging technology, is this thing called XC20. So what is an XC20? Basically, that's a substrate native asset. So that's like this underlying chain asset that exists on like all the different like chains like that are in the ecosystem. But they can be transited to Moonbeam, and when they're on Moonbeam, they're accessible like inside of the EVM, which is where all the developers are deploying their applications. And even more so, like they conform then to this thing called ERC20. ERC20 is the standard like token representation or way of like representing tokens on Ethereum. And so by doing that, that means that we're immediately compatible with all of the Ethereum tools. So things like MetaMask, that we immediately are compatible with all of the existing like smart contracts that are deployed into Moonbeam. So it really is this way where we can expand the reach and kind of the utility of these Polkadot like assets and give them, now there's like, as we were saying, there's hundreds of different like apps you can use these tokens in now. And so that was the first shipped feature using this messaging technology, and it's already seeing quite a bit of use.
Yeah, it definitely has. And bridges play a big role here as well. So where are you guys on that journey?
Yeah, so I mean, there's different routes to getting like in and out of something like Moonbeam. One of them being this XCM route that we just described. So you can use this Polkadot native messaging mechanism to transit assets like from other parachains or the relay chain to Moonbeam. But we do also have a number of different bridging kind of integrations that connect Moonbeam then to destinations that are outside of Polkadot. Some of the key destinations being Ethereum mainnet, some of the Cosmos like ecosystem, Osmosis like we're doing an integration like with that team right now. So I would say that the ones that are most interesting to us there's a couple teams that we're working with. One is the team at Nomad. So that's the main bridge that connects Moonbeam to Ethereum mainnet. And that they have like a very interesting and like highly secure technology. And then the other team is the team at Axelar. So Axelar, like that is like really like the team there. The leaders Sergey and Yorgos are kind of gigabrain like type guys. The thing that's like interesting about their solution is it has a lot of it's attempting to do some similar things to what XCM does for Polkadot, but allows that to happen from Moonbeam to like other chains that are not that are just like outside. And so we're already kind of working on a number of interesting scenarios like with them, this kind of cross-chain like connected contracts approach that I was talking about earlier. And so, yeah, those are the two. And then there's many more. I mean, there's many other bridges and other integration technologies. It's an area where there's a lot of innovation happening right now. But we want Moonbeam to be this place that's kind of maximally connected. And I think the opportunity I see for us is that it goes back to this strategic kind of positioning where I think as these chains become connected, I think of it as like each chain is like a little mini economy or almost like a country, you can think of it as.
Yeah.
And then, there's certain trade routes that are going to be particularly important in the future, I think, right? Because as you have these growing economies, they need an ability to send goods like back and forth between each other. It could be tokens or services, so you access services. So I think, the thinking here is that we're looking to have Moonbeam be like on one of those like key trade routes, right? Where we're for a lot of Polkadot ecosystem projects, we're like a gateway through which access to the outside world can happen. So we're kind of a place where a lot of like assets are flowing in and out. And similarly for like other teams trying to like get access, this is like for a lot of them, they're ending up working with us. So
yeah, you've become really almost like a hub.
yeah, I think that's right. So and then we'll see as these things grow over time. I think if you can kind of strategically position yourself at some of these like key concentration points where there's a lot of trade flowing through, I think that'll be like advantageous too. The joke that I have made before is that because one of the challenges to this idea from one of the other team members was like, well, if things are just flowing through, is that like really valuable? Like, don't you want it to stay? If it doesn't stay, like, is that valuable? But the joke I made was kind of like it's like an exit through the gift shop, right? So like, yeah, you might be just passing through, but then look, there's all these attractions and other things here. Let me stay. Let me maybe spend some tokens there. Let me do some things. So I think it still works out in the end if you're just in the main flow, basically.
That's hilarious because I'm a sucker for those. Exactly. So this really plays into to my character. I absolutely love that. So, I mean, and I know there's a few, but what are some cross-chain assets then already available? Because I know XC.dot was really exciting for the ecosystem, obviously, being Polkadot. And KuCoin is now accepting XC20s as the first, and the first being XC Remark, which was also exciting.
Yeah, that's right. So I would say that there was a lot of demand for DOT, right? So DOT is this very valuable asset. It's, top 10 asset, but it basically was not like usable in DeFi, like more or less.
Yeah.
Right? So there was no way to there was no real official version that made it all the way back to Ethereum mainnet. So I think that there was a lot of demand to say like, hey, there's a super valuable asset, but like we can't like use it in DeFi. And so that's some of the use cases I think that drove a lot of the, that were a big driver for us. So that's, for example, there's the team at Lido like did a deployment to create this like liquid staked like version of DOT. A lot of the like DEXs and other DeFi like protocols like wanted that like as a initial asset. So yeah, I think that was a driver. But we have quite a number of XC assets now, and you can always look to, as I was saying before, to Moonriver to get a leading indicator. So on Moonriver, there's quite a few at this point, but Moonbeam and Polkadot trails behind because we've been working on these integrations longer on Moonriver, but it's going to catch up basically as we establish more of these XCM channels, as they're called, and then the first integration we always look to do is a token integration.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Well, it's been really exciting anyways. But I do want to save a little bit of time. I do want to talk a little bit about the individual networks, Moonbeam and Moonriver. And although they function, similarly and they're connected, they do run separately also. So what can we expect from Moonriver then moving forward on its own? Or what do you see in the future for Moonriver? I know there was kind of this like unexpected development, a bit of a gaming chain type of thing. Is that something you still see for the future of Moonriver?
Yeah, I would say that, well, I would say there's both different communities on Moonriver and Moonbeam, but there is also a bunch of like common ground, like where it's,
Right.
it is like a common community. So there is overlap there. I think in terms of this, like, hey, like certain use cases will only go to one or the other. I don't think that's necessarily true. But there can be leanings. And so what I mean by that is, I think my first vision was, well, maybe it'll be the gaming use cases go to Moonriver, but DeFi use cases go to Moonbeam. And I think the reality is that there may still be like a flavoring of that, right? So there may be some more like gaming projects and NFT projects that go to Moonriver, and more DeFi projects that go to Moonbeam, but you still need DeFi on Moonriver, and you still like, there's still the games like that are like deploying to Moonbeam. So it's not strict like that. And I think that the other thing I've come to realize is that everything is so interrelated. Like, so like when you have a game, you still need like DeFi to actually like have things make sense, right? The user still need DeFi to even operate with like any fungible assets that are coming out of the game. And similarly, like, I see crossover where, you may have gaming assets, and yes, you need like an NFT marketplace like for those, but then there's a starts to be crossover where they would get used as collateral, for example, like in DeFi applications. So it all seems to be a little bit connected, and maybe there's just a preponderance of one or the other. For the gaming side, one thing we do see is there's a lot of like grassroots teams that are developing games, and these may not be huge teams. This may be 2, 3, 4 person team, and they do seem to have a preference for Moonriver right now. So there is like and that could be that it's cheaper there. These are usually not like VC funded, kind of like these kinds of teams. But we'll kind of see how it plays out. I would say in general, in terms of use cases, it's been dominated by DeFi, like, and then our time has been too, because that's what our customers like trying to do. Then we've been like, okay, we need to get smart about like DeFi and like what it means and how these different protocols interact with each other. But the thing that we see growth in right now is in like NFT use cases, either even fine art or particularly gaming, metaverse like use cases. Like, as I know the project that you're working on these days.
Totally. And actually, it's funny. It must be fun for you. I wouldn't say funny, but it must be fun for you to see like the development of the networks in ways that maybe you didn't even expect, right? Because I think a lot of the time, we have these plans or when you build, you have these plans, but the community also dictates a lot of where it goes, right? So
I mean, this is like why this job is awesome, is because like there's like every day it can be a surprise, basically. I mean, I'm not only like learning a ton because you interact with all of these like teams and you learn about their ideas, and so every day is like quite like intellectually stimulating, but it is the surprises I think that like often make the day, right? So I mean, it's many times it's happened where we said, oh, okay, like we think that this is going to happen, let's do this in this way, and then you just get surprised basically. Someone like used this in a totally like different way than what I thought. But it's those surprises that are like, that's like a real like open platform basically, right? That's not something where all the ideas were just top down dictated by the team. It means that the community is bringing the ideas, and yeah, you know what, if it's not something we thought of, then even better. Like it might be that the community comes up with a better idea than just like the 40 of us could come up with.
And that's really what this space is about. So it only makes sense, right? And actually, it was super fun seeing you in the Moonsama community playing Carnage, by the way.
People were very excited about that. So it was really cool to see. I mean, I didn't really, I mean, I knew it was a big deal, like, but I guess I was pretty blown away by the sheer scale of like the event, basically this Carnage event. I mean, there was a lot of people, like there was a lot of people that were like lined up. There was all these people going through the tutorial. I was pretty impressed like by the whole thing.
Yeah, it's been incredible to see how many players have been in, but I was
clearly out of my element too, because I didn't really know how to play that well. And then like, people are kind of locked down in the start, they're about to start, and I'm looking around and it's like there's people with these like glowing swords and like different weapons, and I had like a hamburger. I'm like, I'm not gonna last long in this thing. Like, so I ran away to try to like craft some things basically.
Oh my God, that's so funny that you started with the moon burger in your
It was a McDonald's burger, I think. Or something.
Yeah. That's so funny because it is intimidating when you're kind of sitting in that lobby for a minute and you're looking around, you're like, oh, these people look scary. But it was so fun nonetheless. And I think something that, I really appreciate about you too is just you being so supportive of teams building, on Moonriver and Moonbeam and their respective communities. It's so fun to see you really out there and supportive of all of that. So that's a great.
That's just the I mean, our project is like doesn't do anything on its own. Like like we have this thing we built, but it does literally zero like on its own. It comes to life when there's like someone else with like some kind of great ideas come and like build something on top of it. So I feel like that's the whole point of the platform, is to support the people that are going to do something interesting and like make something interesting happen. We're just these like facilitators, right? It's like infrastructure. And so I think it's the teams themselves that are actually like have some idea that they're going to use this for. That's like what drives like Web3 forward and kind of the things we're trying to like help push along. So
totally. And it's got to be rewarding too for you to like create this environment and then just see what people are able to do with it, right? Like it's kind of neat being able to provide that and just seeing where it goes.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's also the vibe that gets created. I mean, this is something you want to be around people you want to be around, kind of thing. It's a philosophy that I've used even in kind of hiring for our team itself, but it's also the community, right? I think we were talking about this before, earlier before we started recording, that recently was at like an event last week where we had this community event, and really like the goodwill, even though like the market conditions are kind of tough these days. I mean, there was an enormous amount of goodwill like from all these community folks that some of them were meeting for the first time. There was like collators there was like different project builders, there was different other parachain teams. I mean, I was blown away by just like the positivity, and like you could just have this feeling that people like, it wasn't about the money really. People wanted to be there because they wanted to be there. And so that's encouraging to me, right? And that means that we've done something right.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And it's rewarding. I think that's probably the most rewarding part of it, right? Is to see everybody come together and kind of have that support and encouragement, even through like, these type of times. And it really shows the integrity too of the community and what they're there for really ultimately. Right. So in terms of Moonbeam, and I know you were kind of talking, there's a lot of crossover here, but Moonbeam, and Glimmer, is still fairly, like, I wouldn't say new, but is fairly new in the grand scheme of things. How's that been going, and any updates there?
It's been going well. It's obviously still, I would say we're about to leave what I'd call the infrastructure phase for it. There have been some infrastructural elements that are still being deployed, and the last of some of the important ones, I would say, are coming into place quite shortly here. One of the final pieces being this chain link integration, which is is an unlock then for a lot of teams that are pursuing different DeFi use cases that require oracles. But yeah, I think we've gotten a lot of the same tooling that was deployed in Moonriver is all deployed now. Things like our Etherscan deployment, these multi-sig tools that one needs to securely manage like funds on chain. So there's a lot of those tools are all like deployed at this point. And I think we're at a moment now where we're this kind of first wave of like DeFi infrastructure is about to deploy and kind of launch on Moonbeam. And then, like I said, I think that it's these builders now, these like builders that are using this like the connected contracts approach, these messaging connected like contracts. That's like the wave of building that's like happening right now, probably for delivery, let's say like starting in Q3. And those are things, the reason I'm so hot on those things is that they are things which are uniquely enabled by Moonbeam, by like the Polkadot architecture, by XCM. And so these are things that, if you're on another L1, I mean, we're trying to, ultimately developer have choices, right? So when you're looking out of the landscape, you might say, well, like there's Avalanche, there's Polygon, there's all these different destinations, and why should I choose Moonbeam over these ones? And we want to have this like reason of like, hey, we think that you'll be able to build apps that like can get to like any user and any asset, like, and if you do it on Moonbeam, we have these like special features that allow you to do that. And by the way, there's all these other benefits of great community. It's like low gas fees, and there's other reasons as well. So I think that's what I'm most excited about. But that's kind of we're at the chapter now where I think it's like DeFi infrastructure, this like DeFi 1.0 infrastructure, and then that's like the next phase is coming in the latter half of the year.
I like how you casually slipped in. And by the way, we have a great community, low gas fees.
Every bit helps, right?
That was a nice one. I enjoyed that. So aside from building, like if we're talking about Polkadot in general, what are some features you would like to maybe see from Polkadot, or some changes moving forward? I mean, like we talk about everything being perfect all the time, but there's also, we're always improving, always growing. Is there anything from Polkadot that you think you would like to see moving forward?
I mean, I think that performance is like always a big thing. So we're working really with the core parity team on a bunch at this point. We have a pretty close working relationship with them on a performance improvement. So that's always needed as things grow. As all this building happens, we need to make sure that the capacity of the system stays ahead of any demand. So that's one. I think I'm quite excited about para-thread technology.
Yes.
So for the use case for us is, again, it goes back to this, like, why build on Moonbeam versus another EVM chain, let's say. And it's because, like, I think parathreads will really, we're going to build some features around that to allow even Moonbeam developers to create like almost call outs so that they can use the full power of Substrate to help power their dApps. And so I think that's going to be quite unique and differentiated and very powerful. So that's one. But I would say overarching is also just to like have like more great like parachain teams. And there are a number I've met with. I've tried to be helpful to these teams they're building and trying to figure out, they're earlier on in the journey, they haven't launched yet. They're trying to figure out like token plans and how to have those community. And so I try to be as helpful as I can to these, because really I would say that's like, the set of chains that are on Polkadot, they all provide, some valuable service to the network. And so the more of those valuable services there are, the more the value increases for everyone, right? So on Moonbeam, we're trying to make accessible all those services. So even as a developer on Moonbeam, if there's currently 20 of those services available, if there's 30 or 40, then like the choice and the value increases. So I think that's like, that's probably almost the most important thing to me, is to continue to find these great teams that can build parachains and increase the number of services that are available on the network.
Oh, absolutely. And therefore expand the network altogether. And, I really appreciate that you mentioned parathreads, because I think that was something that was, really talked about when we saw Gavin Wood's roundup. I think it was the beginning of the year or end of the year, somewhere around that timeline. And it was talked about a lot then, but I haven't heard much in the community about it now. So thank you for mentioning that, because it's very exciting, the parathread thing, and it has the potential to really change things in kind of a new and better way, really. So that's exciting.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be, it's again, this power of Substrate. I think that a lot of people know about like EVM and building Solidity smart contracts. Far less people understand like the power of Substrate right now. So I think we can be, we can help be a vehicle for that, right? To like educate people about, hey, you don't have to bend, these parathreads make it easy. So it's not like, hey, you have to go through a crowd loan and this whole like process. It's just like, hey, maybe there's just like a part of a snippet of logic that's very expensive or difficult to do like in an EVM. But you can just do it in Substrate here as a parathread, and then like we'll connect it back so that you can call it from your smart contracts. I think that's going to be, it's going to kind of be like just like we are in general, an on-ramp to Polkadot. I think we can be maybe an on-ramp to Substrate to kind of educate more people about Substrate and show them the power of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's just so much potential here. And I think, actually it was Chico in my interview the other day that was saying, like, he just absolutely has no doubt that Polkadot's going to fly up to the number 3 spot at next bull run. And I think, that just goes to show its potential on its own, just that people are, excited and really believe that this is going to be it. So that's exciting. But we did talk briefly about how you were active in the community. That's been mentioned already. But you've been on an incredible amount of like interviews and panels lately. Is educating something that's really important to you, or that you're really passionate about? Because you don't just interview. When we talk to you, you're very good at educating. Is that something that you're passionate about?
I would say that like I see that as part of my job. I think that that the Polkadot as a technology is both like complex and like more or less widely misunderstood, I would say. And so I just see my job as trying to, I've spent a lot of time like looking at this, thinking about it, like, laying plans for Moonbeam. It was like quite deliberate why we chose, we're just like big believers in this technology. But I feel like part of my job is to combat this kind of misunderstanding or confusion around it. And so I just see that, that's why I just take every opportunity I can to try to explain things. I try to explain things, not using a lot of jargon, technical jargon, and trying to explain, why it is that this is important, why it is it unlocks like new possibilities. And yeah, so conferences where I was last week, some of these interviews, I always try to, put a plug in for Substrate for Polkadot, because I'm just such a big believer in the approach.
Yeah, and you do a really good job of it. And I think, creating an educated community is what creates a strong community. Because if your community is not educated, then they're making decisions that are uneducated. And that can often lead to a little bit of a, uneasy community, or, and you want to build this like strong community that's knowledgeable and educated. So I think I really like that you said you don't always use technical jargon. Sometimes you do, but it's great because it educates both sides, and everybody in the space. So that's really big. And it's big too, as we move further ahead with adoption, because we're going to see lots of onboarding, lots of new people coming up, in the future. And I know it's a little scary right now, but that doesn't mean the future doesn't have, a lot more onboarding of new people coming in. So props to you there, 150%. But lots of recent news for Moonriver and Moonbeam. And we could be here all day talking about what happens just in a week, as we mentioned before. But the word busy doesn't even begin to cut it. But are you able to touch on some of the more recent news, in particular Uniswap and Lido? I know you mentioned Lido already, but why is this great news?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm always encouraged by the kinds of folks that want to collaborate and have deployments on Moonbeam. So, if you look at liquid staking as a category, which is Lido's category, that's basically an approach where you can take a token that's designed for staking, but give users options to use that stake token then in other DeFi and other protocols. So it is a very popular option. It gives users more options for their tokens. But if you look at that category, basically the market leader in that category is Lido right now. So in terms of value, for sure. So on Ethereum mainnet, they are the dominant player. They are expanding multi-chain. And so I think that, when you look at the universe of, okay, there should be a liquid staking version for DOT, let's say. And so then, a protocol like Lido is going to, they actually told us, they're like, well, we kind of did an assessment to say, what's the best approach for us to take here and who are the right people to partner with. And so they came to us, right? And they came to us and said, hey, we've looked at the options and we think working with Moonbeam makes the most sense. And so that started, that was probably, it might have been a year ago even at this point, right? So
yeah, right.
And so it's like that with many of the other top protocols in the space. I think they see Moonbeam as as the kind of the right partner to have, especially insofar as they want to develop products on targeting Dappsama, right, or Polkadot. So we're quite pleased with that. And the Lido use case, the thing that makes me happy about the Lido use case is that they're using this XCM technology. So the way the Lido app works is there's a dapp on Moonbeam, but then we exposed special kind of functions for them to be able to send XCM messages to the relay chain, so they could control staking operations or staking actions on the relay chain. So in the dapp, when you're a user, you don't see any of that, right? So you just go to the dapp. It's a very simple interface. You plug in your XC dot, you get out this ST dot. But behind the scenes, there's actually two specialized chains connected with messages that are servicing that user experience. And so to me, it's a small example, but it's an example of the future. That's one of the big unlocks for this this connected contracts approach. The unlock is that as a user, I have this simple experience, but behind the scenes, there's a bunch of machinery kind of going away. There's these multiple specialized chains, but that complexity is kind of hidden away from the user, right? They're just dealing with this simple thing in front of them. And so I think that's, because this user experience is one of the big friction points for getting broader adoption. So anything that can be done to make it easier for the user, I think that's gonna help adoption. And in this example, even though it's a bit of a simple two-chain scenario, you're still getting that effect where you kind of have these things happening, but the user is, that complexity is hidden away from the user. And so I see that as a great example of how these messaging approaches can kind of improve the user experience, right? And that's going to lead to more adoption.
Yeah, user experience is huge. Absolutely. And I think, when you've been in the space a long time, or been building a long time like you have, that could be something that you overlook, right? You haven't done that, but that could be. And I think, being somebody that's maybe not super, been in crypto very, very long compared to most people. I mean, I've been here a couple of years, and, getting into it, user experience has a lot to do with your whole, grasp on how it all works and your whole passion for wanting to be part of it. I mean, if you're not having a good experience, how do you expect to want to be a part of it? So yeah, absolutely.
And I wanted to just I didn't comment on the first part of your question, which was on Uniswap. So I mean, just Uniswap, that's another like great kind of almost surprise success story there, because I mean, anything that happens on Uniswap is done by voting, right? So you have to have a Uni tokens, and the Uni token holders like are voting basically on like what's next. And so there were community members over there that put forth this proposal to say, hey, like Uniswap v3 should move to Moonbeam. Like myself, we don't have any Uni tokens, so this was like not us doing the voting. The community over there voted, and it was like overwhelmingly like positive to say like yes, like Uniswap v3 should move to Moonbeam. And they're going to use they're going to be leveraging these like cross-chain messages also. So I think the idea for the Moonbeam deployment is to use it as a place to figure out how remote governance can happen. So they want their governance system on mainnet to be able to signal out like changes to the Moonbeam deployment, and that's a big challenge for them right now as they're going multi-chain. Is that the governance is a bit of an unclean, or it's kind of a complicated situation now. And so I feel good about the fact not only that Uniswap's coming to Moonbeam, but also that they're going to leverage this like cross-chain like messaging technology to solve like a real problem they have.
Yeah, well, that's really what it's about, is solving problems for sure. But Uniswap was actually something that when I posted, I was going to talk to you. That was a big community part. They had a part in that question because they're really, really excited about those things. So like I said, just seeing what you guys have done to lay a foundation for all these, integrations, et cetera, is just incredible. And actually big news on that topic is, Arrignton Capital announcing, $100 million fund to support projects building on Moonbeam. That is massive for growth and trust in the future. Like that must have been exciting to hear.
No, I mean, the folks over at Arrignton have been longtime supporters, like from like our seed round and and onwards. And I think, and I think it's a great like vote of confidence, right? That they wanted to do this fund with us, that support like project teams in the ecosystem building. I think it's a great, it's a great vote of confidence for the ecosystem in general. That now there's this capital and these professional folks that can help like teams like with advice and grow. We're already seeing a lot of like engagement activity like on this. I couldn't be happier. I mean, it's been a great collaboration, and I think it's it's going to be extremely helpful to help grow the Moonbeam ecosystem.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, actually, you hit another milestone, which was a grant received from the Web3 Foundation. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So yeah, the Web3 Foundation grant, that's work that we had done a while back, actually. And it had to do with creating a permissionless collator set so that you could have collators coming, in like permissionlessly for helping produce blocks on, for the parachain, for our parachain. In fact, a lot of other teams have adopted this work that we've done for ones that wanted to have this permissionless collator set. So really, I think we were pleased to be able to just kind of button things up a little bit more, create some UI so that it was easier for other teams to use. And so yeah, I think it was great to kind of get that squared away.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And as usual, I will be following along in the community with Moonbeam and Moonriver. I'll be there. So I appreciate you greatly talking to me today. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate your, like all the stuff you do in the community. So I'm happy to come on anytime.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. Take care.
All right. Bye.
See ya.